All right, let's jump right in. Today we're taking a deep dive into the Book of Ezra.
Oh, this one's a fascinating one.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking ancient Persia, a return to Jerusalem, rebuilding a whole society, not just some buildings, but a whole way of life.
Right. It's about resilience, faith, and all the challenges of starting over after a pretty traumatic experience.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
I was looking over the sources you sent, and I'm ready to unpack it all.
Awesome. Let's do it.
Okay, so boom, it's 539 BC, King Cyrus of Persia.
Yep.
He's in charge, and he issues this decree letting the Jewish exiles go back to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple.
It's a major turning point. I mean, think about it. They've been in exile in Babylon for decades. And this decree, well, it's practically word for word what the prophet Jeremiah predicted.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, he said there'd be a 70-year exile.
70 years, that's a long time.
It is, and, figuring out exactly how those 70 years are calculated, that's a whole scholarly debate in itself.
Uh-huh, I bet. So are we talking from when the Babylonians took over or when the first temple was destroyed?
There are different opinions on that, yeah.
History's full of those old mysteries, isn't there?
It definitely keeps things interesting.
For sure. Okay, but let's talk about this homecoming. Ezra, our narrator in all this, he doesn't miss a thing.
Oh, no, he's incredibly detailed.
He lists every family, their whole lineage, even how many people are in each group.
It's like reading an ancient census. It's incredible.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop there. He even tells us all about the treasures they brought back with them. Gold, silver, vessels from the first temple.
You can practically feel the weight of history in those objects.
Right. But wait, isn't there something about a discrepancy in the number of vessels?
Yeah, there's a bit of a mystery there. Could be a simple scribal error, maybe a missing part of the inventory, who knows?
It's like a little peek behind the curtain of history.
Exactly. It's those little details that make it come alive.
Totally. Okay, so they arrive in Jerusalem, and what? They don't waste any time.
Not at all. I mean, Zerubbabel and Jeshua, they take charge.
Yeah?
And the first thing they do, they rebuild the altar and start offering sacrifices.
Wow, so they're really getting right back to their traditions.
Absolutely, but of course it's never that simple, is it?
I mean, I can only imagine. Rebuilding a whole temple, a whole society, it's got to be a huge undertaking.
It was. And think about the people who had been living in the region all that time while the exiles were gone.
Oh, yeah, good point. So what, did they want to be a part of this rebuilding effort?
Some of them did, yeah, but there were different religious practices involved, and so they ended up being turned away.
I can see how that could cause some tension.
It did, for sure. Rejection often leads to resentment, and the project was definitely delayed because of it.
Makes sense. But even with all that going on, Ezra, he still gives us these really vivid descriptions.
He does. When he mentions all the specific instruments used in the rebuilding, the clarions, the cymbals.
So we can almost hear the music, the commotion.
You can feel the mix of joy and sorrow, especially for those who remembered the first temple.
Yeah, that must have been a very powerful feeling.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got this whole religious revival going on. They're working on the temple. But what about, the bigger political picture? Was everything okay with the Persian Empire?
Well, not entirely. Things get a bit complicated there.
I bet. Was there pushback?
There was. See, enemies of Judah started sending official complaints to the Persian kings, guys like Ahasuerus, also known as Xerxes the Side, and Artaxerxes the High.
Wow, going straight to the top.
Yeah, and these complaints, they were written in Aramaic.
Oh, interesting.
It gives us a little window into the languages that were used back then.
Wait, so the book switches between Hebrew and Aramaic?
It does. It's fascinating.
Like a built-in language lesson.
It is. But even more than that, these complaints show us the power dynamic that existed between the massive Persian Empire and these smaller, distant provinces.
So politics were playing a big role, even back then.
Oh.
Okay, so then we fast forward a few decades, and Ezra enters the scene.
That's right. And he's not just any scribe. He's an expert in Mosaic law.
Like the real deal.
Exactly. And he's given this big mission by King Artaxerxes himself.
Okay, what's the mission?
Artaxerxes gives Ezra a ton of authority and resources to support the Jewish community. His job is to make sure they're following both Persian law and the law of Moses.
Wow, talk about a balancing act.
That's a tough job for sure.
And let's not forget the journey itself. From Babylon to Jerusalem, that took, almost 4 months?
Almost 4 months, yeah. Can you imagine? Organizing a whole caravan like that, the logistics are mind-boggling.
It's a testament to his dedication, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
So he finally arrives in Jerusalem, And, well, I'm guessing things aren't exactly as he expected.
Not quite.
Okay, what happens? Spill the tea.
Well, he makes this discovery that sends shockwaves through the community.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat.
He finds out that many of the Jews, even some of the leaders, have married people outside their faith.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And that's a big no-no, right?
According to the law of Moses, it's strictly forbidden.
So how does Ezra react to this?
Let's just say it's dramatic. We're talking tearing clothes, ripping out hair, the whole 9 yards.
You must have been devastated.
He was. It clearly hits him hard.
So what happens next? What does the community do with this revelation?
Well, there's this overwhelming sense of guilt and a feeling that they need to take action right away.
So they have to decide how to handle it.
Exactly. And it wasn't an easy decision. They end up agreeing to send away the foreign wives and their children.
Wow, that's a really tough call.
It is. It's a heart-wrenching choice, but it shows just how committed they were to following their law and preserving their religious identity.
It's a major turning point, isn't it?
It is. They even hold these oath-taking ceremonies and very meticulously list the names of everyone who had intermarried.
Wow, they were serious.
Oh, yeah. This wasn't just about rebuilding the temple anymore. This is about defining who they were as a people.
Yeah, it's a real dilemma, isn't it?
Yeah.
Trying to rebuild, hold on to traditions, but the world's changing around them.
Right. It's like, how much do you adapt? How much do you hold firm?
They were dealing with assimilation, cultural identity. Those questions haven't gone away, have they?
Makes you think. And what strikes me is Ezra, he doesn't shy away from how tough this is, the emotions, the choices. It's all right there.
Oh, he's very honest in his account.
Absolutely. And speaking of Ezra, his lineage isn't just some random detail, right? This guy's a direct descendant of Aaron.
Moses' brother.
Exactly. That connection gives him some serious authority. I mean, it's not like he's just some scribe.
He's a leader, a scholar, deeply rooted in their traditions.
And it makes me wonder, we're hearing his side of it, but what about those families who were forced to separate?
That's an important point. Their pain isn't really centered in the text.
But you can imagine, right? That had to be incredibly difficult. Absolutely. Every historical event, even one about rebuilding, there's a human cost.
So true. Okay, so after all this drama, what happens next? Does the temple get built without any more hiccups?
Well, Ezra doesn't give us a play-by-play of the construction, but we know it's finished during King Darius's reign, about 516 BC.
Okay.
And of course, Ezra's there for the dedication.
Wouldn't miss it for the world.
He describes it all, sacrifices, celebrations, the music.
After all that, the temple is finally done. That must have been an amazing feeling, like a huge victory.
It was. But you've hit on something important here. This wasn't just about a building.
No, definitely not.
This was about reviving their faith, their nation, who they were.
And like we've seen, that journey wasn't easy.
Not at all. It really makes you think about what rebuilding actually means.
Yeah, it's not just the physical stuff, it's that resilience, the hope, creating something new out of what was broken.
And that's why Ezra's story still resonates today.
Right. I mean, look around. There's still displacement, conflict, people having to start over.
Yeah. And Ezra shows us, very honestly, those struggles, but also those moments of triumph.
It's a timeless story.
It really is. Before we move on, is there anything else that jumps out at you about Ezra?
Oh, there's so much. But what gets me is that interplay of faith and action, it's everywhere.
It is. From King Cyrus's decree, which is seen as divinely inspired.
Right, to the community's efforts to, rebuild and purify.
It's this constant back and forth, divine intervention, and human responsibility.
So they're working with God, but they still have to do the work themselves.
Exactly. And it's not always perfect. There are setbacks, doubts, times they stray from the path.
But they keep coming back to that desire for restoration, that commitment.
And that belief that revival is possible, even after everything they've been through.
It's a powerful message of hope and resilience.
It is. Ezra's story, with the history, the personal struggles, the spiritual side of things, it speaks across centuries.
It really does. It really is. It makes you wonder, if someone's coming to Ezra for the first time, what's that one thing they should take away? What do you hope sticks with them?
For me, it's that even after devastation, exile, whatever kind of loss, there's always that possibility of renewal.
Yeah, no matter what, you can start over.
It's about resilience, the power of community, never giving up hope.
We'll all need to hear that sometimes.
Oh.
Before we wrap up, is there anything that this whole exploration of Ezra has left you thinking about?
Oh, tons of things. But one that keeps popping up is, what does this story teach us about tradition versus change?
I see what you mean. I mean, Ezra and the whole community, they're committed to their laws, their ways of doing things.
Right, but they're also in this new world, all these different cultures around them.
It's like, how do you stay true to yourself, but also, adapt to a changing world?
Exactly. How do you balance the old and the new? That's a question that never really goes away, does it?
Nope, not at all. Well, to everyone listening, if you haven't read Ezra, you're missing out. It's history, drama, intrigue, and there are so many lessons that still apply today.
And as you're reading, think about that question. How do we balance tradition and change? It's still shaping our world in huge ways.
Great point. And with that, we've reached the end of our deep dive into Ezra. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.